Welcome, good morning. Thank you. First of all, I have to thank you so much for coming out on this snowy morning. Was anybody here at GradUCon last year? Anybody last year? Patrick was here. It seems like the snow likes to come on GradUCon Day, so maybe we'll try it in the middle of the summer and we'll have better luck. So thank you for slogging. Welcome, my name is Christine McCary. I am from the Office of Career Advancement, which is actually in this building, so welcome to our home. I serve as the Associate Director of Graduate Student Preparation in the office, and I'm joined here today by many of my colleagues. Sorry about that. There I am. All right, it's going to be the today. Sorry about that. I'm going to point out a few of my colleagues only because you may already know them because you've used their services, you've worked with them one-on-one, or you may see them moving in the future. The first is Patrick Houlihan, if you could stand up. Patrick is our Assistant Director on the Student Preparation team, and he is a liaison to the Social Sciences Division. And the other member of our team is Cynthia Hillman, and she is another Assistant Director on our team, and she is a liaison for the Humanities Division and the Divinity School. So we are, and I am the liaison for the Biological Sciences and Physical Sciences Division. So if you have a specific question and you're specific to your discipline, please find us. We are your people. I want to make a quick announcement before we get started. AJ Ehrenstein, whom you've probably gotten 4,000 emails from over the past month, he asked me to let you know that there may be some of you in this room who registered for the morning session but did not register for GradUCon itself. Know that you are free to stay for the rest of the day if you wish. There will be lunch at noon. We're going to have an incredible keynote. Darren Reesberg from the Institute of Politics is going to be here, so excellent panel discussions in the afternoon. And we're going to end the day with an alumni networking reception featuring Eric Isaacs from Argonne National Lab. So please consider staying. If you haven't registered, you're welcome to. So thank you again for coming today. I'm just going to go over a few brief notes before we get to the meat of it. This workshop is on creating effective resume cover letters. And it is a workshop because it's not going to be a lecture. It's not going to be the situation where I stand up here and I talk to you for 2 hours straight. There's going to be a big group discussion where we talk about different sections of the resume and the cover letter, and then I'm going to ask you to go to tables. I'm going to ask you to go to your tables and do some work, maybe for 5 or 10 minutes at a time on specific sections. Also at each of your tables, actually, hi, sorry about that. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll just go forward. So let's talk about objectives first. So the purpose of this session is to teach you, moving forward, how to tailor your resumes and cover letters to specific job advertisements. Hope that can everyone still hear me, even if the mic's not on? Okay. You'll be able to, sure. I'll just yell. And then come to us with materials that are a little further along so we can focus on fine-tuning them with you in one-on-one sessions. So that is one of our objectives of the day. We also, thank you, we are going to help you translate your volunteer and academic work into professional experience. And I understand not everybody here today is looking for positions outside of the academy, but we can still help you learn to talk about your experiences in a way that shows you're willing to provide broad service to an academic institution. We're going to show you how to show instead of tell about your experience. It's important to say, to give it reasons why and evidence why you're good at certain things instead of just saying, I'm good at this thing. So we're going to talk about that. We hope that you'll leave with an edited resume and cover letter that you can use moving forward in your job search, and that you submit your application materials with confidence. So our agenda, we're going to spend the majority of the day on the resume part. So from about now until 10:30, creating effective resumes, and we're going to take a little bit of a break. Feel free to stand up and grab breakfast whenever you like during those whole 2 hours. Use the restroom, whatever, but we have a sanctioned time for that as well. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time on cover letters. And then I'm going to try to leave some time for Q&A at the end. You can do a lot of Q&A at your tables when we're doing the workshopping sessions, but there is going to be a big group. If you have a question that you think would be helpful for the whole group to know, please save it for them. So at your table, if you can look at the materials on your table, feel free to refer to them as you go. There are highlighters and ink pens for editing as we go. There's also your industry or career advancement expert. So can our experts raise their hands in case they're fully aware? So you have somebody at your table who is the best at what they do, at just what we're doing today, editing resumes and cover letters. So please feel free to use them as a resource throughout the morning. We have enough for everybody at the table. Certain copies of handouts, resumes for graduate students, cover letters for graduate students. These are great resources to take with you. We're not going to refer to them today, but please feel free to take them with you. I also have a before and after resume example. It's a one-page front to back. It says before and after on the top of the page. This is an example of how that's kind of what we're showing you, differences in formatting, differences in wording, fixing some of the typographical errors. Something that's really important as a graduate student, whether you're a master's or a PhD student, is identifying which skills and qualifications you have that you can use broadly in the professional world. So there's a worksheet also on your table. It's a one-page front to back called Skills Identification Worksheet, which you can use on your own to think about what translatable skills you have outside of the academy. And then we also have, I'm going to refer to this later, the anatomy of the best cover letter article. Feel free to read that if you want to tune out for a couple minutes at some point. We'll address it in about an hour. And there are just a few copies of, actually this one didn't make it to your table, there wasn't enough room, but we have these, Transforming Your CV into a Resume, and then finally, Curriculum Vitae and Letter of Application. This workshop's focus will be on professional resumes and professional cover letters. However, there are many comparisons to draw between cover letters, CVs and resumes, and letter of applications and cover letters. So I'll point them out as we go. Please also ask your industry or career advancement expert if you have specific questions about academic application materials. Any questions about any of that? I should also note that if you have a question at any time you think would be worthwhile to address before the group, please raise your hand. We're happy to talk about it at any moment. So please just raise your hand, let me know. So part one, creating effective resumes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, I like the yup. Usually you have to ask 3 times to get like a rousing. All right, so please get your resumes out. If you brought a job advertisement with you and your draft resume, please do so. There are also likely a few mock job descriptions that we brought with us at your table. If you happen to not bring anything with you today, we still have a way for you to participate, so please break out your resumes. So first we're going to talk about what is a resume versus a CV. So a resume is a summary of your professional experience, your education experience, and your skills. So I'm going to come over here. I feel like I'm right in the front. Its main purpose is to convince the employer to bring you in for an interview. So therefore it should not be a recapitulation of all of your experience everywhere. It is just a snapshot of your most relevant experience that's going to make that employer want to bring you in and talk with you a little bit more. It differs from a CV because it's intended for professional positions. CVs are primarily used for academic jobs. The focus of the CV is on your training, your interests, your academic work, in contrast to being just a snapshot of your skills. There's generally not a length limit for a CV. I have seen CVs for senior science investigators that are 40 pages long, and that's okay. But a resume, for the most part, is 1 page. And in some cases, in some industries, it's 2 pages. And you can talk about that specifically at your tables when we break. I will also point out that the focus of today is going to talk about our discussion today is going to center around the standards for US resumes. There are some different standards in different countries. Should you be interested in applying for a job abroad, there are a few resources you can look into. Going Global is one of them. It's actually a little confusing. So it's called Going Global with 2 G's in the middle, but the actual website has 1 G. It's like Going Global. So goingglobal.com. It provides an overview of resume and CV trends in 27 different countries. So if you are considering applying to a job somewhere else, you might want to check that out to see. For example, in some other countries, it is common to put your marital status or your birth date or a picture of yourself on your resume, and that's not something you would do in the United States. If you have specific questions about that, again, you can ask at your table when we break. So specifically, resumes should be specific and as quantitative as possible, be accurate, Written in the appropriate tense for the position when you did it, so anything you're still doing, you would use current tense verbs, anything you've already done, using past tense verbs. Written in reverse chronological order, so if the experience you're still doing or did most recently comes first, and then backwards through time for each section on your resume. It should be truthful, obviously, not purposefully misleading in any way. And again, it should be just a snapshot of your relevant experience for the job you're applying for, and really most likely a reader is going to give it about 30 seconds. So if you can fly through it in 30 seconds, you can feel confident that another reader can as well. Resumes should not be longer than 1 page unless it's a specific case, have spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, be repetitive, use generic words like helped, assisted, kind of did this, kind of did that. You want to have really strong words. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Or say what you were supposed to do. Resumes are focused on what was your impact, what did you leave the organization, how did you make it better, instead of what was your goal. There are 2 different kind of broad scopes of resumes. We're only going to talk about one of them today. We're not going to talk about a skills-based resume, but what that is it lists a person's job qualifications in skill categories rather than a traditional chronological resume. So for instance, you might have bullet points that say, I am very skilled in teaching large groups of students or in mentoring undergraduate level students in the lab, but you wouldn't say exactly where you did that or when. And the reasons you might do that is because you're changing careers and you're trying to translate experience that you had doing a job that might be unrelated to the one you're applying for to the job you're applying for. You might have large gaps in your work experience, which can happen for a number of reasons. For illness, you might have taken time to have a child, or other reasons, or also your educational background is atypical. So if you led with education on your CV or on your resume, it might not be as compelling than if you led with a skills section that highlights what you bring to the job. So overall use of these resumes is rare. In 99% of the case, you're going to be using an experience-based resume. If you're wondering if this kind of resume might be a good fit for you and for what's coming next, then talk with your graduate career counselor at Career Advance. We're happy to talk to you. So here's an example of a skills-based resume in case you see one in the future. So this does actually lead with education, but sometimes skills and experience will come first. And again, they just group training and leadership skills, and the skills they list here, or the accomplishments they list, might encompass 4 or 5 different jobs they've had over the last 20 years. But they want to group their expertise. So just an example. So we're going to focus again on experience-based resumes. They list the person's job qualifications in traditional work experience categories. And this is an example of just a small piece that we're going to be seeing over and over again. So actually, I've taken a few pieces from the sample resume, the before and the after. If you want to flip to the after side, a few of the little snippets I'm going to show today are going to be directly on there if you want to see an example. So your resume should absolutely include at the top your contact information in some way. I believe on that copy, the type is very light. It's like a very light gray where it says Jane Doe, etc. I would not say go that light. The printing didn't work very well, so you really want to go for very, very, very dark gray or black. So there was a bit of a printer error on that. There are also on your resume multiple additional sections detailing your experiences, and then those can be in a range of areas. They can be volunteer experiences, they can be paid experiences, they can be community involvement. It also is an opportunity for you to talk about your skills and languages and certifications that you bring to the table, and also any interests if there is room and if it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate to have a hobbies or an interest section on a resume. In some industries like consulting, it's often asked for, like one little line at the bottom about your interests, but in some industries it's frowned upon. So ask your industry expert about that one. So specifically focusing on your education section, so looking at your own draft resume at the moment, look at it. Your graduate education at the University of Chicago should be listed first. So because each section is in reverse chronological order, your current work should be listed first. Note that in this example, this person is pursuing a Master of Arts in Anthropology, and they're expected to finish in June of this year. So you want to make sure you put the word expected and not just that degree. It almost makes, it could be interpreted as the degree has already been approved, you've already been finished, but it's going to be actually awarded at that time, when in fact you're still working on it. Whether you add your GPA or not is up to you, but we do ask in career advancement that you use 2 decimal places, so to the 100th place, so 3.80 out of 4.00, and if you're going to list it for one of your degrees, you should list it for all of them, okay? And generally, if you're 3.5 and up, it's a no-brainer to put it up there. If you're not sure about if it's your GPA is below that, talk with your graduate counselor, and we can figure out whether it might be a good idea or not. It's also a place that you might list honors or coursework that you're taking, and that's really a case-by-case basis. And especially in technical fields, advanced coursework that you take might be worth listing. So if you're in a computer science or financial math field, often the advanced coursework you take, you can list maybe 3 or 4 of those. You don't want to list any basic courses that everyone in your field has taken. So if you were a biological sciences student, if you listed Biology 101, it's like, yeah, everybody's taken that. But you might want to list like advanced cell biology or something that not everybody has done. So also honors awarded. I want to be careful with this section as well. Often I see resumes where literally 1/3 of the page is honors and awards, and they have really broad names like Outstanding Student Award. And I don't know what that means, and an employer is not going to know what that means. And if it is a really prestigious award, you should limit the ones that you list to 1 to 2, but give a short description also of on what basis that was awarded. You might say, it was awarded to the top 1% of the people in my class, or it was awarded to only people with GPAs above 3.8, or given to someone who's given outstanding community service. So pick 1 or 2 of the most relevant awards, the ones that are most prestigious, and put those on there if you wish. That can be in education, but it should not be a separate section. No honors and awards section alone on a resume. Education considerations. Should you include GPA? We kind of already covered this part. Academic awards, honors, and grants. We did talk about that too. On a CV, you would list a completely separate honors and awards section because you have endless length to do so, and you should list all of your honors and awards, absolutely. You can include your dissertation or thesis work. Under University of Chicago, you could put thesis and then the title of it if it's relevant to the job you're applying to, if it might make sense. Say you're applying for a curatorial position at a museum and your graduate work was directly related to the job you're going to be doing as a curator, then that might be worth listing. Relevant coursework, list only advanced, take up no more than 1 to 2 lines. Professional certifications if you have them and they're relevant to the job. Any academic work completed abroad. So if you did a sabbatical of a sort during your graduate education or you did study abroad, you can list that as well, 1 line under the appropriate education section. Should you list high school information or experience? No. At this point, completely leave it off. Only go back as far as your undergraduate education. Any questions about this so far? Okay, so please take a few minutes to edit your education section and discuss with your group. If you have any questions, talk with each other. Thank you for taking a couple moments to look at your specific section. You can continue the discussion about education if you have more questions at the next section, but we're going to move on because our next section of the resume is actually going to take up a bit of time. The next section you're looking at is experience. So this is the section where you have the opportunity to detail all of your position relevant experience, and that can be paid experience, volunteer experience. You have the most flexibility here in how you present your experience. We're going to talk a lot about the different ways you can do that, but this is your chance to most convince the reader of your fit for the job and that they should bring you in and talk to you more. Experience may be paid or unpaid, could be internships as well. Any school organizations you were a part of, even now in graduate school. It's crucial to keep the reader in mind and write the resume through their eyes. So make sure that what you are writing makes sense to someone who is outside of yourself, outside of your field even. You might want to consider handing your resume to a few people that are completely outside of what you do to make sure it makes sense to somebody outside of you. Which experience should be included? Any that are relevant to the position you're applying. So this is where your job advertisement comes in handy. If you could pull out your job advertisement, that you wrote your resume for. And again, if you didn't bring a job advertisement, there are likely a few extras at your table that your industry expert brought with, and we can just at least demonstrate the point with that. So what I did was I just pulled a job advertisement from simplyhired.com. The employer here is the National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners. And this job is for a director for test development. And I'm just going to use this as an example as we go. So on a job advertisement, you will find the summary, which is the job title. Rarely you'll find a salary. You might find a range of salary, but usually it's going to say commensurate with experience. And then you're going to see if it's full-time or part-time. You're also going to find out more about the employer. Sometimes the majority of a job advertisement is going to be this section. You're also going to find the job description, and this is the most important part. About the position, it might say qualifications or requirements somewhere in your job advertisement. Here you're going to find usually a bulleted list of points. Sometimes it's a narrative paragraph listing qualifications and experience the employer would like you to have. For example, the National Board of Medical Examiners is looking to improve the quality and number of cognitive testing items, recruit and recognize item writers, interact with vendors. So these are all, they're basically giving you the answer. They're giving you the answer, and it's up to you, if you are qualified and you have experience in these areas, to show them that you have this experience by using their own language. So what I did was I just pulled this part out about the position. It's exactly the same as what was on the previous slide, just a little bigger. What I do when I meet with a student is we pull out the job advertisement and I literally look at it and I go, where's the important information? I first circle any bulleted areas or narratives that talk about different experiences or skills you should have, and then I go through and I underline the important pieces. So lead the staff, will join a team of dynamic leaders, passionate about the mission of this employer, assess competencies for osteopathic medicine, going to be advising a staff of 15 full-time staff members. It's in Chicago, obviously important to know where the job is located. And then also there might be a section, a special requirements section. This time they're asking for a doctoral degree, professionally and educational measurement or a similar area. They want at least 10 years of test development experience, excellent writing and editing skills, track record of published manuscripts. So normally on a resume, we would not say include publications at all as a separate section. On this resume, you might want to do that because they're specifically calling it out. Also, strong communication, interpersonal, and team leadership skills. You're going to see this last statement on like 90% of job advertisements. Still important to demonstrate you have those skills. So after you go through and you underline these areas, you circle what's important, you highlight, then it's up to you to look at your experience and evaluate, am I demonstrating I have these skills and these qualifications, and am I making it clear to the reader? So I'm not talking about it in the way that I've actually done it, but I'm translating it for them in a way that they will understand in that industry. And there are a couple ways that you can do that. So also, yeah, these are must-includes, how you translate your experience, I already said it. So at this point, just use the editing tools at your table to go through your job advertisement and identify the important experience qualifications. So I encourage you to do similar to what I did, circling, highlighting, go through, find what's important. If it helps you to make a separate list of those items, go ahead and do that. But feel free, do what works for you. Just take a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes. So you might have already started to talk about this at your tables because it's a natural transition. But how do you translate your academic experiences into your professional experiences? This example happens commonly for graduate students. How many of you have had a teaching experience in graduate school or will at some point? You know, you just haven't gotten there yet? All right. So you could on your resume say, I was a TA and I led discussion sections and I graded exams. But look at all the other things that you do. There's actually a lot of skill involved in teaching, even as a teaching assistant, even if you're not the sole lecturer. You have to be skilled in administration. There's a lot of paperwork and organization that happens, and also understanding the structure of a university, who to talk to, how to make things happen. You're a mentor to students in addition to a teacher. You're also a counselor, right? You students come in, I really wanted a 99%, I got a 97%, right? It happens frequently. You're also managing people. You might be a lead TA, or you might be a lab coordinator at some point in which you manage others. You use course management software to upload information and to lead discussion sections and blogs. You're also part of a team. You're part of a team that makes this course happen. So there's all of these things that you do that are much bigger than just being a teaching assistant, right? So this is just one example. How might you show these other soft skills that are listed, like communication, leadership, teamwork? So in communication, you could talk about your written work, publications that you've done, chapters, maybe a research statement. Can demonstrate that, especially for academic positions. That's usually asked for. Oral presentations that you might do at meetings, at local and national conferences, any symposia you present at or that you organize as well. How would you demonstrate leadership and teamwork? You're working on some kind of academic or group project, especially in the sciences. Any community service that you've done outside of school, and any student organizations that you've participated in can show this quality. How about interpersonal? This is often better demonstrated in a cover letter, where you can talk about your connections to people. A little bit of a harder thing to demonstrate on a resume, but it's subtle and goes along with these other soft skills as well. Administrative, if you've planned events, that can demonstrate your administrative skill. Working with faculty and university staff on various committees that you might be involved in. So for example, we're going to get really specific now. And previously I said, how would you demonstrate leadership and teamwork? Here's what it might look like on a resume. So say you were part of the Humanities Graduate Council and you were the chair. On your resume, you would write under, I like to say, academic and community involvement, or something as the section. Under this section, you would say, Humanities Graduate Council, the University of Chicago, your position was chair. And then you list 2 or 3 bullet points that specifically describe how you were a leader and how you worked. So in this case, I say, led efforts to plan the annual Humanities Graduate Council Research Symposium, which attracted over 50 humanities graduate students and faculty from peer institutions. So you're showing a lot of skill in this one sentence, and you're being very specific. The more numbers and frequency you can put in your bullet points, the better off. You want to create a high definition picture for that person. You want to paint them as clear as you can, because they weren't there with you when you did it. You want to make them feel like you were there. The other example would be planned and conducted weekly council meetings, inviting department faculty and student services offices to attend in order to foster liaison relationships. There's a lot of communication here, administrative organization, faculty interaction. So you're demonstrating a lot of these skills by showing them what you're doing. You're not just telling them, I did faculty interaction, I did communication. You're actually showing them the context under which you did it. Is this clear? All right. Awesome. Here's another example. On the sciences side, maybe you were a peer mentor this is just totally made up. This doesn't actually exist. Everyone's going to get excited. I want to do that. Sorry. So the Life Sciences Research Mentoring Program, you were a peer mentor maybe. You mentored a cohort of 18, so again specific, 3rd and 4th year UChicago undergraduates through the process of creating a research poster. So a lot of teaching here, mentoring, communication again. You met with your cohort weekly to discuss progress toward applying to life sciences doctoral program. So service to the university, service to your discipline. A lot of these things are being demonstrated. So make your experience stand out. Use words and phrasing from the job advertisement. Companies spend a lot of time writing these job advertisements, and they want you to use that language and phrasing when you're writing your work, your cover letter and your resume as well. Often, actually, the more important qualifications or skills that they want appear closer to the beginning of the job advertisement. So that's not always the case, but it's a really good idea to focus your efforts toward the top and then less toward the bottom. Show rather than tell your experience. We demonstrated that on the last slide. Consider using specific headers within your experience section. So you could just call your section experience, or you could break it up a little bit. You could break it up into 2 or more sections, one of which focuses on experience that's really important for the employer. So let's say you're applying to be an analyst. You're a financial math student, you're applying to be an analyst. You might put analytical experience or quantitative experience as your header, and then list the 1 or 2 experiences that are very specific to that area. What this does is it allows you to draw all of the really relevant experience to the top of your resume. So say you did do, you did a position that that contributed a lot of your skill to what you're applying for, but it was 10 years ago. And you have to go in reverse chronological order in a full experience section. If you pull out a subject area, then you can pick and choose which relevant jobs can go in that specific area. So if you do choose to do a very specific experience section, like research experience, teaching experience, these are just some example, you could put all of your other experience that's relevant to the position in a section called Other Relevant Experience or Other Professional Experience. So it doesn't mean you have to exclude positions or skills or experiences that were not quantitative experience, but you can put them below the really important experience later in the resume. And I'll show you an example of that before we go on. So no need to include all of your work experience, only what is relevant to the position, because pretty much starting now, you're not going to be able to fit all of your experience on one page. So you have to pick and choose. And this is a tip I'll ask you to do. Create a master resume. This is a document that only you see. It's a Word document on your computer that you use to just file everything you've ever done. And it can just grow and grow and grow. And you would never show this to an employer, but you might use it to pull experiences out throughout your life. You're applying to a job, you're going through the exercise of circling, outlining, okay, what is the experience I've had in the past that is relevant to this job? Go to your master resume and pull that specific experience out. All right, so here's an experience example. So here, this is actually on Jane Doe's resume, if you want to go back to that, on the after section, the after side of the page. This is a specific experience section called research experience, where she's specifically listed only her research experience. The way you would do this, if you want to be very consistent throughout your resume, she lists the company name first, North American Container Company, and its location in Chicago, Illinois. Her title is project specialist, and she's still at the job, so to present. Notice that in her bullet points where she's actually showing you what she did, she's using current tense or present tense verbs. So patent pending on surface coating technology, address and solve production problems involving polymer heat transfer. She's using current tense. So for the previous position she's held, for instance at Technology Transactions, being very consistent with the company, location, position, dates, these are now past tense verbs. So be very consistent with this throughout your resume. And I'll leave you to read the other examples as well. Present tense, I'm just getting ahead of myself every time. And then separated out, she has another section, teaching experience. It's separate. She worked in the Department of Physics as a TA, and then also at USC was a teaching assistant for another course. Notice that this was, I did this on purpose. There was I really didn't, I just noticed it now. So there's a hyphen here with the dates, and then there's a semicolon. Actually, you want to be as consistent as possible, keeping either a hyphen or semicolon throughout your resume. So that was bad on me. Use the function-specific header. So how to show versus tell. Again, going back to that job advertisement for the Board of Medical Examiners. Specifically, I'm looking at this bullet point, review and update policies, incorporating best practices and quality improvement strategies. So how would I show this experience in an experience section? So telling would be to say, and I want to make the point of I'm using the actual language from the advertisement, but this is not as effective. I'm saying reviewed and updated policies, incorporating, that sounds exactly like this, right? It's not that helpful. I'm just telling them my experience. What I could do is I could show it instead. I underline the words that are still using their language, but I've updated it, showing a lot more detail, a high definition picture of my experience. So I reviewed and updated laboratory standard practices and policies by benchmarking the Dean Labs practices with blah, 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 streamlined laboratory workflow, incorporating cutting-edge RNA extraction technology into standard practices. So this shows my actual experience, what I have done, where I've gotten results doing this, these skills and this experience that this employer is asking me to do. Okay? So be specific. In the teaching example, less specific is led discussion sections. More specific would be led weekly, showing frequency discussion sections with the number of students majoring in this area. Conceived of and initiated a discussion board, posted daily problems, monitored student discussion, and then showing what impact you had. You were awarded Teaching Assistant of the Year. Obviously, you can't put that if you didn't get it, but if you do have an award like that, good to show what kind of positive impact you had. So much more effective to be specific and give a lot of detail. And again, you won't be able to include all of your experiences. Pick and choose those that are the best show of your fit for the position. So are you showing or telling? Examine your experience descriptions on your own resume. Who is your reader? And are you keeping your reader in mind when you're talking about your experience? Are you showing or telling? What was your positive impact in your experience? Reword your descriptions to give the reader a high definition view of your experience. So this is your time to go back. I'm going to give you a lot of time for this. We're going to have about 10 minutes to go over your own experience sections. I'm going to leave this slide up, but use 2 to 5 bullet points per entry. When appropriate, use 1 or 2 function-specific headers, like teaching experience, research experience, like we talked about. You can use additional professional experience as a catch-all for the rest of your relevant experience. Words and phrasing from the job, translate your experience. So go ahead, go to it. Use your industry expert and each other. And if you have any questions, I'm going to be walking around too. Please feel free to flag me down. Note that this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. We just wanted to give you a sense for how to do this on your own. The experience section by far is the most changeable, flexible, so you will spend much more time than just this 10 minutes editing your own section, but I want to make sure that we get to the last area of the resume talk today. So the last part is the skills and languages section. It doesn't have to be called skills and languages. It will talk a little bit about the what you could call it as options, but the purpose of this section is to demonstrate which specific skills, technical skills, and maybe language skills you can demonstrate that will show your fit for the position. And there are a couple areas that could be covered depending on your experience and what kind of job you're applying for. You could talk about what kind of computer languages you speak and software you use. I'll just point out a couple notes here. If you're going to say MS Office, make sure it's all of the programs that comprise that suite of programs, which includes Access, Publisher, Outlook. So if you don't know how to use those programs or experience in them, make sure you list specifically the ones you do use, like Excel, Word, and PowerPoint are the most common. Programming languages here, if you are in the computer realm and you use them, even if you're not, it might be useful to, even if you're not applying for a job in that area, it doesn't take up much space. They might be able to use someone who has that skill. In the laboratory, I'm going to show an example of how to demonstrate laboratory skill on a resume, but showing any kind of specific software you use in the lab could be a good idea. Human language skills, you would demonstrate this by talking about how proficient or fluent you are in that language, and then indicating whether that's in speaking or writing or both. And also some certifications that you might have. In some cases, these belong in education. For example, I'll give an example. When I was at Northwestern, I did a certificate in business management for scientists and engineers. It was not an academic program. I didn't get credit for it, but it was at the Kellogg School, which is a pretty good name. So I put it in education. I put it under Northwestern University, and that made sense to put it there. So if you have some kind of non-credit certification that is relevant to the job you're applying for, it might go well here or it might go in education. So look at it, see how it looks. You can ask your graduate counselor for feedback on that as well. So here's an example also from Jane Doe's resume from the after portion. If you want to look, it looks just like it does up here. I just called it skills and languages here. And then computer, what I really like is computer, colon, and then listing all of the software that you know. And sometimes I'll put languages here and then colon, or obviously saying you're proficient in Polish, speaking and writing says what you are. A note for international students, international students mainly, or if your native language is not English, and if you are applying to positions in the United States, our suggestion is not that you call your native language native and then English fluent, but that you say you're fluent in English and German, or English and Polish. Just say you're fluent in both, and there's no need to really diversify your ability to speak those. If you are fluent, obviously. If you're just proficient, then say so. Alternative titles for this section, you could call it technical skills. You can call it programming skills if you're applying for a job that's very focused on programming, computer skills, language skills, laboratory skills, whatever you like. Here's an example of a laboratory skills section. This is way too big, all right? This is actually pulled from a CV, but it just gives an example. You might want to do only 1 or 2 bullet points. if you work in a science lab, what I like to see is the area of the technique, so molecular biology techniques, cell biology. If you do any animal work, you might want to list that. Software is on here. And then you list all of the techniques you know how to do. It's very clean. It takes up very little space. But again, don't just list everything you know how to do. If you need to pare down any section, this one's the one to do it. So only list those skills that they're really asking for or that translate well into skills they're asking for. So this is the last time we're going to do this for resumes. Use the editing tools at your table, go through your job advertisement and look at your resume at your skills and languages section or whatever it looks like right now and kind of figure out how you want to structure that area. And we'll spend just a couple minutes on this because I don't want to eat too much of the break. We gotta end and then move on to cover letters. So go for it, just like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. All right, let's get back to it. Just a couple more notes to make on resumes before we move on. I'm going to talk about other possible sections you might encounter on a resume that might be appropriate for your experience. One of them is volunteer experience, especially if you're applying to jobs in the nonprofit sector. This could be a prominent section on your resume. Your volunteer experience can be presented with work experience as appropriate. It may be combined with other types of experience in a section called leadership and community involvement. It's very wordy, you can call it whatever you like, that's one I like. Or academic leadership, especially if you're applying for an academic line job. Awards and honors, again, mentioned relevant awards and honors in education or experience. You might mention that in experience by saying, under your teaching experience, oh, I was named TA of the year for this department. So instead of listing it separately, you can embed it within experience or education. Including publications and presentations. Only list those that are directly relevant to the field. In the job advertisement I showed you from the National Board of Medical Examiners, they specifically said, we want you to have an established record of publications. So on a resume, if you have 10 publications, you can't really take up half the page with that. My suggestion would be to have a selected publication section. Maybe list your most recent 1 or 2 that you're first author on. Or if in the outside of the science world that chapters or whatever that you wrote that are recent and prestigious, and they can always search for you on PubMed or some other public academic publication resource to find your other things. So just list those that are relevant. You can also say under selected publications, these are 2 out of 10 publications I have. Or you could mention how many publications you have in your cover letter. Yeah, and another way to do that under research experience is invited to present research at 3 domestic, 2 international conferences. So you don't have to list all of your presentations, but you can just say, how many you did and give an idea for the impact or the prestige of those talks. Affiliations are generally not mentioned in a separate section on a resume. Like on a CV, there would be professional affiliations area. Unless you were involved in some way on their board or in some kind of committee, then you would want to mention that in your volunteer experience or involvement section. Objective statements are really out of style. So if your resume starts with an objective statement, the only time I think they're okay really is if you have a very general resume that you're bringing to a career fair of some kind. And that's not what we're doing here today. We're applying to a very specific job. Anything you would say in an objective, you would end up saying in a cover letter. So there's really no point in putting it also on the resume. And really, you know you've done your job if you can hand someone your resume and say to them, what job am I applying for? And if they can tell what kind of job you're applying for based on what you list and how you present it, you know you've done your job. No need to put an objective statement. References are not included on resumes. They're only provided on request. This is different than on a CV. On a CV, you would list at least 3 references. Generally, references are asked for during an interview process, usually toward the end when they're considering you to hire you, like seriously, they might ask you for some references at that time. Hobbies and interests, again, appropriate depending on the field. If you need space, this is the first section to go. And again, special considerations, we already talked about this, exclude any of this information, visa citizenship status, race, nationality, ethnicity. And again, at the very end, when you're ready, you feel like you're ready to turn it in, have a couple people read it to proof it for typographical errors, but also to make sure that they understand everything you've said. It's clear as an outside party what the impact and relevance of your experience is to the job. Give them the job advertisement too. So final notes on resumes. These are just things that are fairly common sense. Font. Use an easy-to-read font like Times New Roman or Arial. Not a good time to use Comic Sans MS, right? Am I right? It's good for flyers, not good for resumes. Avoid hard-to-read fonts like Courier. The reason Courier even exists is it's like a skeuomorph. Like it's something that it used to have to be like that because that's the only choice they had, but now we have better fonts, so let's not use that one. Margins, 1-inch margins are the easiest to read on a paper, and they also show a sense of confidence. Like, yes, I am showing you a very good snapshot of my experience. I don't feel the need to jam it all in as much as I can in one page. They should be no smaller than 1 inch, and even on all sides. So top, bottom, left, right. Yes, crowded page suggests desperation, not good. Submit all materials as PDFs. This is for 2 reasons. It avoids formatting problems if they don't have the same version of the software or even operating system that you used, but also for security. You don't want someone to have access to your application documents. I don't know if someone would really be out to get you if they found your like Word and they changed it or something, but for security, good to just create a PDF. So edited but not complete. You should have other people look at your resume when you finish this process that we started today. You can come to see one of our career advancement counselors, myself or Patrick or Cynthia, to edit for content and tone. Also, you can ask a UChicago alum working in your field to review your resume. It's also a great opportunity to network. It's a good excuse to talk to someone. Hey, you're an expert in your field. And they feel all like, oh, yes, I am. And then you give them your resume, and you can start a relationship that way. So you can ask your department administrators for some recent alum working in your field. They might know some. LinkedIn.com/alumni, write that down. It's awesome. You can't just find it on LinkedIn, you have to type it in. It's a great search database. You can choose a school and search for alumni based on where they live, what they're doing, who they're working for, and it shows you how you're connected to them based on your own network on LinkedIn. Really cool tool. UChicago alumni community, it's been revamped. If you've used Alumni and Friends in the past, that whole search engine is going away and being replaced. And you'll hear more about this in spring 2013 from Alumni Relations and Development. So it's not quite ready for use by students yet, but alumni are currently populating information on here. It will be a great resource for you to use to connect with alumni in your fields. Family and friends also. Layperson's perspective and copy editing, great for that. So, questions before we break? Yes?
Yeah, my question is in regards to my Orthodox career. I have spent many years in the armed services, and I want to know what is the best way to incorporate that into my resume with the rest of my career experience.
That's a great question. And you're talking about, you want to point out relevant experience you had in the armed services as it applies to the job you're applying for.
The tendency of roles change in operational platforms, change in my job, occupational role. I mean, all of that, you know, how do you account for all that progression and highlight and denote it, but also incorporate it as relevant real-world career experience?
It's a great question. So again, I would look very carefully at your experience, and I would say, what is relevant? All the roles that I played, what is relevant to this job that I'm applying for? You can still give honor to all of the roles you played by listing them like in bullet points. So you list that like it was a job, like under experience, right? And then you can say, served a number of roles, including this one, this one, this one, this one, and then maybe spend 2 or 3 bullet points highlighting what you did, showing them what you did as it's relevant to the job you're applying for. So you can call it experience. I have seen on some resumes military experience is a separate section. It's up to you how you want to present that. That's a good question. Yeah. All right, I'd really like to break because I want to save a little bit of time for Q&A. 5-minute break, and then we're going to move on to cover letters. So if you want to go use the restroom, they're on the 2nd floor or in the basement of the building. Feel free to grab some extra fruit. I will say before you go, actually, I put on each of your tables 1-page evaluations. Can I use one to hold up? Sorry. Thank you. They look like this. If you have to go right now and you can't stay, please fill this out. There's a box on the breakfast table. Please drop them in there. But we'll resume in about 4 or 5 minutes. So quick break. Thank you. All right, so for cover letters, who can can tell me the purpose of, so the purpose of a resume is to get an interview, right? For them to talk to you more. What's the purpose of a cover letter? To get them to read your resume. To fill in a gap on the resume. Any other ideas about what is the purpose of a cover letter relative to a resume? Talk about your motivation for applying to the job. Okay. Yeah?
Make them think of you as a real person and give yourself an actual voice and
make them think of you as a real person and give them an actual, put your voice out there. Any other ideas? Yeah? That's a really good point. It serves as a writing sample. We were actually all right. I mean, I didn't hear one answer that was less than stellar. And actually, to the last point, you're being a writing sample, that is a really crucial point. Almost every job advertisement I've seen talks about being able to communicate effectively, speaking and writing. And your cover letter is the first thing they're going to see. And they're going to make a first, you have one chance to make a first impression in that way. I often joke, like, for people who apply to work in our office career advancement, that's like the Olympics of cover letter writing. Like, your letter better be on point, right? Because that's what you're going to do. So you're actually all correct. It is, you do want someone to be interested enough to read your resume, but you also have the opportunity to expand upon your experience in a way that you can't do so on the resume. And it also does give you a chance to talk about your motivation, why you want to be there, and give a sense for your personality in the cover letter too. So you're all absolutely right. And actually, yeah, the last thing I wanted is just to explain why you're a good fit for the position, which is also the purpose of a resume. So everybody said everything else. The ability to communicate in writing, it's an example of your written communication skills. I don't even need to be up here. You guys know all the answers. It's perfect. And again, a cover letter should add information to your resume. It should in no way rehash the information on your resume. It's your opportunity to highlight just a few things that are the most relevant pieces, your most relevant experiences and skills. Highlight them, get the person interested in reading more about you. So the anatomy, oh, I want to make a point, thank you to the friend in the back who pointed this out. Before I forget, the one very important piece of information I didn't say about formatting for resumes, font size. You can maintain 1-inch margins, right, and you can use Times New Roman, but if you're using 8-point font, still no dice. I would say go no smaller than 11-point font, okay? 10 is just gets to be harder to read. And spacing, like line spacing, that is up to you. I've seen great looking resumes that are single spaced the whole way through, and I've seen terrible looking ones. So play with formatting. It's up to you and use your creativity on that. So just want to make that point before we move on. Consider using the same header, font, and margins as your resume so your application looks cohesive. For example, Jane Doe on your resume example with her address, she might put that same header on her cover letter page, and that would be totally appropriate. It should be no more than 1 page. This is not true in the case of a letter of application, which you would use to apply to an academic position. Those are often 2 or 3 pages, because you have to talk about your research experience and what you plan to do moving forward. And there's a lot more effort that goes into that. You need more space. But generally, cover letter, 1 page, except in very few cases. Use standard business letter format. If a postal address is unavailable, no worries. These days, most things are submitted electronically. That's okay. Try using the hiring manager's name if you know, or try to find out. You can also call the HR department and ask who is the hiring manager, so you can address it directly to him or her. Or you can use Dear Sir or Madam, or Dear Search Committee is also appropriate. Question?
If you, for example, you're applying for a technical position, you think it's going to be read by the chief tech officer, but you don't know, should you just go forward and say, Dear Mr. Smith and the team, or something like that? Or would it be better to be more general about it?
Question is, if I kind of know who it might be, should I put it on or should I not? If you're pretty sure, I don't see a problem with putting it on there. If you're really not sure, better to give a general term, Dear Search Committee, Dear Sir or Madam. Okay. 3 to 4 paragraphs in length. And we'll talk specifically, a cover letter is a technical document. It has very specific pieces of information in each of those paragraphs. We're going to talk about those now. Tone and voice. I can't emphasize this enough. Take out your Anatomy of the Best Cover Letter Ever article. It should be on all of your tables. It's on The Wall. It's the website it came from. This just came out a couple weeks ago. It's just a really funny thing to read. I'm not suggesting, I'm going to put a disclaimer now. I'm being recorded, so this is on record. I'm not saying that you should write a cover letter that sounds just like this, but it's a good example of humility. I think that I often read cover letters, and I know the person outside of the cover letter, and the cover letter can come off as very arrogant sometimes, like, I'm going to do this for you, and I'm great. And you really want to give that impression, but you want it to be a simmered confidence. You know, you want to explain what you're going to do for that company, but also how you're really looking to learn and expand and grow your skills. So this is just a funny example. You can just cut right to the actual text of the letter. It's pretty funny. This person's basically groveling for a job. So I'm not suggesting that, but it makes a good point about the tone you're looking for. Humble, but confident. So instead of saying, I believe my skills are the best fit for your position, say, my skills are an excellent fit for your position. So no waffly statements. Go in it confident. You want to balance information about you and the employer. The other often big mistake I see is having the cover letter focus only on you, the applicant. And you're thinking, that seems totally reasonable because I'm writing it and I'm talking about myself. But you know, you need to make the employer feel good. You want to show them that you're actually interested in that company and that you're writing this letter specifically for them. So it's important to include information about the employer too. You might want to mention, I also believe in your mission statement of et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or I noticed that you're doing research in this area going forward, and that's a great passion of mine. Or you know, there are ways that you can incorporate language that show that you're specifically interested in that company and that you are a good fit for that company. So emphasizing your fit in equal measure and they should be genuine reasons why you want to work for the company. How will your knowledge and experience be beneficial to the company? Not just by working here, I will gain skill in this and I will gain experience in that, but I'm looking forward to sharing my experience in this area with the company. So it's very much a two-way street working for an employer. Describing how well you'll fit into the employer's culture. They'll be impressed if you know about their culture. You might know someone who works there. You can talk a little bit about that. Informational interviews and web searches are a great way to learn more about an employer if you're not sure. Informational interview would be talking to someone who works there, who has done so in the past, about their experience. And also, the Glassdoor.com take that with a grain of salt, but there are some employee reviews of employers on there. So it can be a great way to figure out what goes on in the inner workings of that company. So your first and last paragraphs are the easy part. It includes, the first paragraph, the name of the position, the name of the employer, where you heard about the listing, and your motivation to apply. It may include a current employee or affiliate who referred you to the position or told you about it. One sentence summarizing your qualifications. Please use the phrase excellent fit or well positioned instead of ideal candidate, because I guarantee you no one's the ideal candidate, and that's one of those things bordering on arrogance, you know, or not having a sense of really you have space to grow. So using I would be an excellent fit for this position, or my experience in A, B, and C makes me an excellent fit for this position. Mention specifically why you wish to work for that company, institution, or lab. If you can slap the same first paragraph on 8 different cover letters, then it's probably not specific enough, okay? So be very specific. So here's an example of a first paragraph. I was thrilled when Dr. Gabriel Donovan notified me that the National Board of Medical Examiners is searching for a director of clinical assessment. My experience overseeing medical testing and managing assessment teams in clinical settings makes me an excellent fit for this position. In addition to using my skills and experience in this role, I'm looking forward to being a part of an organization that fundamentally supports the betterment of healthcare industry. So you're talking about the mission statement of the company. You're saying that we have a shared motivation for working together. Here's another example. I won't read this one out loud, but it's on the other side of things, like the humanities side. So again, mentioning quantitative and analytical skills, you're setting it up, because then the reader's going, okay, now I'm going to hear about quantitative and analytical skills. So it's a way to set it up, tell them that you are experienced overall, and now I'm going to tell you more information. So review your opening paragraph and edit according to these style notes. So take a couple minutes right now, 3 or 4 minutes. at your tables. And I'll bring it back here. All right, let's all come back together. Talking about your first paragraphs. It's pretty straightforward. Name these things, talk about why you're a good fit, move on. The tough part of a cover letter, and we know as counselors for career services, we know how painful these are to write, right? It takes a long time. The middle part, again, like the experience section on a resume, paragraphs 2, and if you have a second paragraph in this middle section, 3, this is your opportunity to talk about why you're a good fit for this position, okay? Really choose 1 or 2 experiences to expand upon. The best experiences you can choose from your resume are those that demonstrate the most number of skills and qualities that they're looking for in the position. This is not a place to list 8 different organizations you were a part of, even 8 different roles you played. Picking 1 or 2 experiences and expanding upon them, giving them more information they can't find on a resume that directly demonstrates your fit for the position. It's crucial to keep the reader in mind, remembering what they don't know and translating for them. By just telling them what you've done and expecting them to go, oh yeah, that's right, they have skills in this, they might not see it. So directly use, again, the wording from the job advertisement in these middle paragraphs. So if anybody's seen Burn After Reading, John Malkovich's character, he's writing a memoir, right? He's like, oh, I'm writing my memoir. And really nobody cares, right? And he feels I don't think he does feel bad about it. I don't even know if he's aware of it by the end of the movie. But a cover letter is not a memoir. It is really just a highlight of 1 or 2 experiences. So a chronological rehashing of your life story to that point is not the purpose. And you also just can't get into that much detail in 1 page. So again, picking 1 or 2 experiences. So think of 1 or 2 projects or tasks you've accomplished that tell the most convincing story about why you're a good fit for the job. Avoid giving a chronological work-life history. Instead, organize thematically based on qualifications and requirements. So if you say, my quantitative and analytical skills will make me an excellent fit for this position, it makes sense that your next paragraph would talk about your quantitative skills. You might pick 1 experience or project that you did that would demonstrate those skills. You can talk about the software you used. You can talk about the team that you worked within. You can demonstrate a range of qualities in this way. And then the 3rd paragraph would talk about your analytical skills. It would set it up very nicely. Keep in mind, use the words and phrases in the job advertisement again. They wrote it that way for a reason. Show rather than tell. Instead of going to the job advertisement and saying, I am really good at this and I am really good at that, instead just say what you did and talk about the impact of that. And that will demonstrate to the reader that you have those skills and qualities. Are answers to these questions included in your text? Not all of these have to be answered, but this is a good check to see if you're accomplishing your goal. Be sure your claims are backed up with evidence of what you actually did. I won't read all of these, but how did you develop the relevant skills required for the position? You might say, you could do that easily by saying, in my graduate work at the University of Chicago, that shows them where it came from. Why should they hire you? How have you been successful in achieving your goals? What makes you unique or more valuable than other candidates? Why do you want this job? What is it about the nature of the work that you find inspiring? And why is it that particular company you want to work for? So once again, I'm going to give you the most time for this. Maybe today, just identify which 1 or 2 experiences you would like to include based on the job advertisement you have, and list the qualities you might include in that discussion in paragraphs 2 and 3. So go ahead and take a little bit of time, and I'm going to leave this up here for your reference. About 7 minutes on this one. Okay, let's go on to the final paragraph. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So your closing paragraph, whether that's paragraph 3 or 4, depending on your situation, it includes the following elements, like the first paragraph, summarizes your interest in the position, reiterates your qualifications, requests an interview, and it says how you can be reached. It's really very similar to the first paragraph, but it says it in a different way, and it's another opportunity for you to say, this is why I want to work for this company, again, or to talk about why you're a good candidate overall using different language. It may also include, like I said, specifically why you wish to work for the company, the institution, or the lab. It could be a statement about their values or their mission. It's a good opportunity. So here's a closing paragraph example. I welcome the opportunity to discuss my quantitative, analytic, and leadership skills in more depth and determine how I can put these skills to use for you. So again, what can I give to you? I'm available for an interview and can be reached via phone or email. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you. So a few things that I have seen that I would avoid are letting them know I'm available on Tuesdays and Thursdays, okay? Like, I have seen it. They might not care at this point, so just giving them your contact information is fine. It's absolutely okay to request an interview. I've had some students ask, is that a little too pushy? I think it's fine. There's a couple ways you can say that. You can say, I would appreciate the opportunity to show you that I'm well positioned to step into this role through an interview. Or you can be humble, and you can again make it's all about you, employer. It's all about you, without being too pushy about the interview. So once again, spend the last couple minutes of our organized time looking at your closing paragraph and making sure that you have all those elements. Okay, this is our last break for today. Think about any questions you might have for Q&A. Okay, a few final notes on resumes and cover letters to wrap it up for the day. Resumes and cover letters should be 1 page each, except in rare cases. This, of course, does not apply to academic application documents like a curriculum vitae or to a letter of application. You should tailor each resume and cover letter you write. The test is, if you can hand your resume and cover letter to a different employer, I mean, obviously just changing the names, then that means it's probably not a specific enough document. Go back and invest more time in demonstrating your fit. Form letters and resumes are easy to identify. Tone should be humble yet confident, focusing on an equal exchange. This is what you hope to gain by working for the employer, but this is also how you can contribute to the work there. These materials are snapshots of your experience. You'll have the chance to expand much more in an interview. You want to save a little bit to talk about, right? So just talking in detail about a few very relevant experiences in that cover letter and talking about only a relevant experience in your resume before you move forward. If you need more help, if you'd like to go over your resume or your cover letter, discuss job search issues, or even do a little bit of career exploration, we do it all here in Career Advancement. You can feel free to make an appointment with myself or Patrick or Cynthia, depending on your academic division. You can do so through your Chicago Career Connection account, which is accessible through the Career Advancement website, or by phone. This is the number to our reception desk, 773-702-7040. And these are also our email addresses and the divisions that we liaise for. Okay. I also want to point out that I know I've presented it's like a one-size-fits-all, even though I'm telling you to tailor your work, one-size-fits-all instructions. There are cases in which I've seen resumes break all of the rules I just said and cover letters break all the rules, and they work. But if you're going to come to us and you want to have something to work with, please follow these guidelines and then ask us, do you think if I could do it this way, it would still work? And we'll let you know, okay? So for the most part, follow these guidelines. There are cases where it can work if you're savvy. So now we have some time. We have about 10 minutes. If there's any questions you have about your work. Before I do that, I'm going to ask Patrick to position himself at the back of the room and trap you until you fill these out. Feel free to stay as long as you like for Q&A. I would like you to please fill out these assessments. I dropped some on every table. It's just 1 page. It'll be quick. If you want to fill it out during Q&A, that would be great. There's a box at the back of the room. Patrick's going to be manning the box. If you could just drop them in there or leave them on your table on the way out, I'd appreciate it. So any questions that we can talk about? They can be discipline specific too. In the back?
I've been applying to jobs lately and going through the whole online process as well as doing informational interviews. And I know the best is probably to do informational interviews and contact someone in the organization. But what happens when, regardless of informational interviews, you must do the online application process? Are there any tips you have, cut and paste basically the job description to your online application? Because it seems like often they just won't get through no matter how hard you try.
Okay.
Because the computer
Yeah, I sense the frustration in your question of that. Yeah, so there's another good reason to use the language on your job advertisement, especially if you're applying to a larger company. Some companies use software that recognizes keywords and phrases in your documents. That's another really good reason to use the language that they give you. I would never recommend cutting and pasting language into the document. I think you're doing everything you can do already by talking to the company, trying to get some tips from them. You might also, if you've had the chance to informationally interview with somebody at the company, you might ask them that question specifically about their process. Maybe it would be helpful, in addition to submitting online, this is a trick that there's a fine line, right, between harassment and being helpful. You want to stay on one side of that line. When you submit your application online, if you've had a connection with someone in HR or somebody at the company, you can also email your materials to them and say, just letting you know, I applied for this job and I'm really excited, and is there anything else I can do at this time? And maybe checking in with that person a couple weeks later if you haven't heard anything. But again, you want to be careful about that, and you don't want to email too much. So does that answer your question? Kind of. I know it's frustrating.
Is there a structure, like anything in the resume or cover letter that you would structurally recommend that could?
For online applications, not really. Unless do my colleagues know of anything specifically for online. That I'm not aware of anything.
I would just make sure that you give the name of the position when you're writing your cover letter. So just be really clear to you. I'm applying for this position in this department or whatever, however they describe it, just in case it's going into a Dropbox with that for you.
If it has a requisition number, include that too. I'm applying for this, the name of the position, in parentheses, number, ID number, requisition number, whatever they call it in the system. And that might be a good idea, just as Grace said, to avoid confusion in case it goes to the wrong place. What other questions do you have for the good of the group? If you have a question, probably other people do too. You're on the same way. Really? We were that awesome? We answered every possible question you have? I'm gonna get perfect. Oh no, that was not for that. No. Oh God. Now I'm gonna blush purple. So yes. Well, I'm happy to stick around for some time if you have individual questions you want to ask myself or at your industry expert. Please take a moment to thank your person at your table for helping this morning. And they might be nice enough to give you their contact information to ask them questions later. Or you can stick around and ask me. Once again, enjoy the day, enjoy GradUCon. Lunch is coming up at noon. Take a quick break and we'll hang around. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming this morning.